everyone, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the books I read between June 8th and June 14th. I'm going to group these first two together since they are part of the same series, and that is The Dark Prophecy, which I gave 4.25 stars, and The Burning Maze, which I gave 5 stars, both by Rick Riordan. These are the second and third books in the Trial of Apollo series. This series is set in the same universe as the Percy Jackson series and follows the events of the Percy Jackson series and the Heroes of Olympus series, so I can't get into too many details. But basically in the first book, the god Apollo has angered his dad Zeus, and Zeus has made him mortal, and he has to figure out a way to get back in his dad's good graces so that he can get his godly powers back. And in these two books, we're continuing his journey, and they follow the events that were set off in the first book of the series. I am still loving this series. I thought that The Dark Prophecy was a little bit slower, which is why I got 4.25 stars. But I still love this series, and I think Apollo is my favorite character throughout all of the Percy Jackson books, and I will definitely be reading more in this series. Again, since these next two are in the same series, I'm going to continue to group them together, and that is The Hidden Witch and The Midwinter Witch by Molly Knox Ostertag, and I gave both of these 5 stars. These are the second and the third book in the Witch Boy series. In that series, we follow Aster, and he is part of a magical family, and he wants to be a witch, but in his family, boys are shapeshifters and girls are witches, and since he is a boy, he cannot be a witch. His family just completely discourages him from learning witchery, until one day his cousin goes missing, and he decides that if he uses his witchery, he might be able to find out what happened to his cousin. So in these books, we continue to follow Aster on his journey and trying to make those around him realize that just because he is a boy doesn't mean he can't also be a witch. We also get to see more of Charlie, who is a friend that he makes in the first book, who is a human who does not have magic but knows about Aster's family and their magic. And in The Hidden Witch, they meet a character which we learn more about in The Midwinter Witch. I love this series. I love the art style. I love Aster and the dynamics he has with his family and his friends, and I really love this series, and I love how diverse it is, and again, how Aster challenges gender norms, and how his family is handling that, and the emotions that everybody is going through when it comes to Aster and his wanting to learn witchery. I love how that continues to develop in these two books, and if there's more books in this series, I will definitely be picking them up. Next up, I read An Unexpected Peril by Deanna Rainbourne, and I gave this book 3.75 stars. This is the 6th book in the Veronica Speedwell mystery series. This mystery series follows Veronica Speedwell, who is a butterfly hunter, and in the first book, she was living with her aunts, but they died, and she ends up meeting this man who tells her that she is in danger, and he whisks her away before she can get hurt, and ends up leaving her with his friend named Stoker, who has a bit of a shady past, but is currently working as a taxidermist. And when the man who whisked her away ends up dead, she and Stoker end up on the run and have to get to the bottom of why people are chasing Veronica in the first place. In this installment, Veronica has an uncanny resemblance to a visiting princess who then goes missing. The princess is there for peace talks, and to keep those peace talks on track, her advisors talk Veronica into pretending to be the princess. Part of the reason Veronica does this is because she and Stoker are also investigating the death of a climber who happened to die in the princess's country, and it was ruled an accident, but they believe they found evidence that convinces them that there was some foul play. So by going undercover as this princess, it gives her more access to people she considers suspects in the climber's death. This wasn't my favorite of the Veronica Speedwell mysteries. I don't know how much of that, though, was due to timing. So if you've been following my recent reads, you know I've read a bunch of adult mysteries recently, and I was kind of burnt out on the genre. But this book was brand new. My hold came in on the library, so I read it. And I think that timing could have played a factor into my not enjoying this as much as I have other books in the series. I also have other characters that we've met in other books that I like, and I wish we had gotten to see maybe some more of them in these books. I'm still enjoying the series, and I like Veronica and Stoker and how they kind of go about solving their mysteries, so I'll definitely be continuing on with the series. This just wasn't my favorite one. Next up, I read some more Warriors manga, and this is the Sky Clan and the Stranger Trilogy. I gave all of these books 5 stars, so we have The Rescue, Beyond the Code, and After the Flood. If you're new to my channel, Warriors is a series that follows a group of forest cats who live in clans and have to try to coexist. In this manga series, we get to take a look at Sky Clan and the things that have been going on with Sky Clan since we last saw them. This is so incredibly hard to talk about without spoiling other books in the series. So just keep that in mind, that if you haven't heard about Sky Clan yet, you definitely shouldn't be picking up these books first. I liked getting to be back with the Sky Clan characters. I liked getting to see what was happening to them. Okay, minor potential spoilers here. Basically, we meet, like, there's Sky Clan's destiny, and that is a super edition all about Sky Clan, but we first hear about Sky Clan in Firestar's Quest. So this might be minor spoilers for Firestar's Quest. Just putting that out there. So it is interesting to see what is happening with Sky Clan now that Firestar is gone, and how they're figuring out how to be a clan when they no longer have Firestar as a guide. And I love getting to see them struggle with that and try to figure out, well, what would Firestar do, and realizing that they can't possibly know what Firestar would do in these situations, and it's not like they can ask him. So they kind of have to muddle through it on their own. And there was a jaw-dropping moment in these that I was like, holy crap, that really just happened. And I love that the errands still have the ability to give me these moments where I'm like, well, dang. So that, okay, I gotcha. And I know if you haven't read these, you don't know what I'm talking about, but if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And, oh boy, was I not expecting that to be in these books. But again, like I said, if you watched the previous recent reads where I read a bunch of the other mangas, these stories, just like those, fill in a bit of the gaps in the Warriors universe as a whole, and I absolutely adored getting to spend more time with these characters and getting to learn these new and interesting things about the world of Warriors as a whole. Next up, I read Brightly Woven by Alexander Bracken, and I gave this book 3 stars. So in this book, we follow Seidel, who is a very talented weaver. One day, she meets a wizard named Wayland, and Wayland asks for her help. He knows some very important information that could prevent a war, but he is very far away from the capital, where the people he needs to present this information to are currently residing. He does, however, have a magical cloak that would make the trip quicker. However, it needs to be mended, and since Seidel is such a good weaver, he hopes that she will accompany him on his journey while working to fix his cloak. Seidel agrees to accompany him, and on the way, she learns more, not just about Wayland, but also herself. So I believe this is a graphic novel that is, like, based on an actual book, and I think that, at least for me, I needed more from this to rate it any higher. I just felt like things moved way too quickly, and I'm assuming that with the actual novel it wouldn't have happened. I just felt they crammed a lot of plot into this graphic novel, and it needed to be longer or something, because at times I had no idea what was really going on, and I don't know if I was supposed to know more because there would have been more in the actual book, or if this was all there ever was. So maybe at some point I'll check out the novel this is based on, but all in all, it was all right. I mean, I enjoyed it, but not enough that I would read another one in this series if they came out with it, because like I said, I spent a lot of time confused. So again, we have a series, and I'm going to group them together. I listened to all of these on audiobook, but I do have 3 of them physically, so I'm going to hold up the 3 I have physically. And that is the first 5 books in the Wayward Children series, which is Every Heart a Doorway, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, Beneath the Sugar Sky, In an Absent Dream, and Come Tumbling Down. I gave all of these books 5 stars. They were all a reread for me. The Wayward Children series is about these kids who find doors that lead them to other worlds. Think like Narnia and the kids from Narnia who, go through the wardrobe and end up in Narnia. These worlds tend to be better suited to these kids than our world. And in some of the stories in this series, we're following characters in their new worlds, and in other ones, we're following them here and getting to see what their life is like when they're in our world, and sometimes it's a mix of the two. And I just really love this series. The first one, especially Every Heart a Doorway, holds a special place with me because Nancy, our main character, is Ace, and that is the first book I had ever read that had an Ace character in it. And as somebody who is also Ace, it made me cry to see somebody who I identified with so much in a book. Like, there were things that Nancy said that I just went, I feel ya. I get it. So yeah, I really love this series. They're very whimsical. They're short. So like, there's not a lot of like character development per se. You're really reading these more for the worlds, and the worlds are extraordinary. And I love this series, and I loved getting to reread them and getting to spend time in these worlds with these characters again. We have another series here. So again, grouping them together, and that is volumes 2, 3, and 4 of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, and I gave all 3 of these 4.5 stars. So in this series, we're following a planet and a moon, and they're at war, and they've kind of drawn in all of the other sentient worlds into this war with them. But the main thing we're following is Alana, who is from the planet, and Marco, who's from the moon, and they're supposed to be enemies, but they end up having a child together, and this child is not supposed to exist, and so many people are upset about it, and we're following their journey while they're trying to keep their family safe from all of these people who are charged with capturing and or killing them and their child. I am absolutely loving this series. I never expected to get as attached to these characters as I have. I'm even getting invested in the stories of some of the people who have been hired to track them down. I really, really am enjoying the series, and definitely plan to continue to read the rest of the series at some point. Next up, I read The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Meddlestone by Jacqueline Moriarty, and I gave this book 3.75 stars. In this book, we follow Bronte, who has grown up with her Aunt Isabella. Her parents left her in her aunt's lobby when she was a baby, so she doesn't have any memories of her parents. They just never came back. So she's grown up with her aunt, and that is the closest thing she's ever had to a real parent. When she's 10, she's informed that her parents have been killed by pirates, and they have left a will that is stitched with a fairy cross stitch, which is magic and means that she has no choice but to follow the terms of the will to a T, otherwise bad things will happen to the town she lives in. Basically, what her parents want her to do is go on a journey to each of her 10 aunts and leave them the things that her parents left for them in their will. So, having no choice but to do this, she sets out to deliver these gifts, and during her journey, there are things that happen that make her wonder if there's more to her parents' story than what she's heard. So, at times I found this book to be a bit slow. It took me a while to get into, and I was expecting her aunts to be a bit more colorful, and they just weren't. I will say there were some twists and turns in this book that I was not expecting at all, and some of which I pegged really early on. I liked getting to see Bronte grow throughout the journey, and the way the journey made her feel closer to her family in general, because some of these aunts she had never met or hadn't seen in a long time, along with getting to feel closer to her parents because she got to hear a story about her parents at each of her aunts' house and see some of the sights that they had seen, since some of them were like, stop into, say, this restaurant and get a mug of hot chocolate. And that was part of the will, so she had no choice but to do that, whereas somewhere we suggest you get, say, cheesecake from here. And it was interesting to see her kind of follow this journey and learn more about her family and herself throughout it. Like I said, there were times where it was a bit slow for me, and I think I wish that had gone a little bit faster. But all in all, I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I read it. Next up, I read Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. In this book, we're following Cal, and he is almost 16, and in his world, if you don't have magic by the time you're 16, then you're not going to have it at all. And he needs to pass these tests to prove that he has magic, but he knows that he does not have the magic, so he is trying to figure out a clever plan to fool everybody into thinking he has the ability to pass these tests. At the same time as he's getting ready to take these tests, he meets a mysterious woman named Ferris Perifax, and meeting her has a dramatic and profound effect on his life going forward. So I really enjoyed this book, and getting to learn how the magic works and getting to see Kellen struggle with the fact that he does not have magic, and in his society that makes him almost worthless. The people in his society who don't end up with magic end up kind of being like the servants to those that do, and if you don't have magic in this society, your status means nothing. He really, really struggles with that, and meeting Ferris changes his whole life, because Ferris is of a different race, and her race does not care about magic as much. It is not important in her society. I don't even know that her society has it, come to think of it. And so she is making him see things in a different light. And I really enjoyed their relationship and getting to see it develop. I enjoyed Kellen getting to realize how awful his society is and how wrong it is, the way they're like treating people who don't have magic, especially when he's on the cusp of not having magic, and how that is affecting his relationship with his parents and his little sister. And I really enjoyed this book, and I definitely want to read more in this series. And lastly, I read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn, and I gave this book 4 stars. In this book, we follow Minley, and Minley has grown up hearing stories from her dad about all different sorts of characters. This is much to her mother's chagrin, as her mother wishes that Minley had a more realistic view of the world and didn't have her head so much in the clouds and in her father's stories. Minley's family is also just barely scraping by, and her mom likes to complain about it a lot, so Minley decides that she is going to go seek out the Old Man in the Moon to change her family's fortune, and the Old Man in the Moon is one of the people she heard about in her father's stories. She then goes on a journey and learns a lot about her father's stories and the world, and what is really important and what makes somebody have a fortune. I thought this was such an interesting book. I loved getting to see how different stories, like the ones her dad told her, were woven throughout the book. I loved getting to see Minley realize what was most important in life, and I also loved getting to see her parents' reaction to her leaving and her wanting to set out and change their fortune. This was such an interesting book, and I love getting to learn more about these stories and these myths that are important to a different culture than mine. It wasn't my favorite book I've ever read, but I did really, really enjoy it. I can see why other people love this book so much. So these are some of the books I've read recently. Have you read any of these books? If so, let me know in the comments section below. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me book emojis. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!